It can't contain what we can do. It wasn't made for the scale. We gonna bring it like a game of
First, to start us off, I just want to introduce Mary Bruno. Mary is the co-founder and executive director of the non-for-profit FABM Base. She's a Creighton practitioner and author of 12 Stripes Deep, How Infertility and Other Suffering Delivered My Greatest Joys. She has been married to Chris for 10 years, and they have one adopted daughter, Bella, and hope to adopt another child soon. Mary plans to publish a journal companion for infertile women in the summer of 2023. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. For those that haven't read your book already, although I highly recommend they do that, would you mind just starting off by introducing yourself to them?
Yeah. Well, as you said, my name is Mary. I've been married to Chris for 10 years. We have an adopted daughter who's now 6 years old. And I am a cradle Catholic, grew up playing sports and just having this desire to help people. And so I initially became a physical therapist assistant where I practiced for about 6 years until we adopted our daughter. And then I kind of, I was at that point, I had been infertile for a few years and I had a very late diagnosis of endometriosis. It took 12 years to be diagnosed, right before we got married, actually. And so that really inspired me. I had discovered the Creighton model. It was just so late that I discovered it, and that bothered me. And I'm like, why? Because had I learned about it sooner, I may have children. I mean, I don't know that, but like I may have children and I wouldn't have had to go through so many years of such intense physical pain because I would have been diagnosed so much sooner. So I was really greatly inspired by just getting this information out and educating other women and couples, specifically in high school age, because that's when I had a lot of issues. And then it just kind of developed and grew into something else. And so originally I was taking back the terms. I have a YouTube channel with lots of videos. I haven't had added any recently because we started the nonprofit fan base, helping to connect women with fertility awareness and what method is the best fit for them. And then I speak a lot about infertility because that has been a big part of my life. But a great source of suffering, but also ironically, a great source of new life. Mm-hmm. And so I joke because it's infertility that showed me how fruitful that my life actually is. And so it really pushed me out of my comfort zone to really be more open to what God is calling me to do with my life and even in great suffering. So that's what really inspired the book and what you'll find in it. And I became a Creighton practitioner too, eventually. So.
That's amazing. So for people that are really in the throes of infertility and are just like struggling to even understand what you just said, what is the first thing you usually say to them to help them understand the way that their own journey can be beautiful?
I get it. I mean, that's the first thing. I totally get it. I was so... I would say the worst of infertility for me. So I'll give some context. I've been married for 10 years. The worst part of infertility for us was about the 2-3 year mark, because that's around the time where you're like, okay, this really doesn't look like it's going to happen. Now it does happen for some people eventually, but my pain was so bad over the years. I've had 12 surgeries. I did need a medical hysterectomy 2 years ago. So I am permanently infertile, never been pregnant, never will be pregnant. So just to give you some context of where I am right now. But when so about 8 years ago, I guess would be the hardest part for me. And there was no one talking about it at that time. Like I live in a big Catholic community down here in New Orleans. Everybody was getting pregnant around me. I was the only one not getting pregnant. And there was so much confusion about who I am as a Catholic woman and a wife, because my understanding was, I just get married and have babies. That's what you do. I never it wasn't even a discernment, if I'm being honest. It was just like, this is just what we do. Not realizing, even though I had this diagnosis going into marriage, that doesn't happen all the time the way that we want it to. So the first thing that happened to me is that I hit rock bottom. because I had a false positive pregnancy test. And that's what the book opens up with, this story of like when I was at my lowest. But it was that was my turning point. And what I recognized, and not everybody has to hit rock bottom, but we do need to be honest with ourselves and with God about how we feel. And this sucks. Like, it's just so hard. And there's I mean, we got the enemy too, shooting a lot of darts at us, lots of lies. And I just didn't realize all of these things added up. So the first step for me was just getting honest, like, God, I'm mad. I don't get it. I did everything right. Like, I'm this good Catholic girl. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't feel his comfort. I didn't understand. And I was mad. And it was that moment where I just really heard on my heart, do you love me? And that's when I recognized that love is a choice, and that I don't always get exactly what I'm asking for, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't love me passionately and doesn't want to give me all that my heart desires. It just may not look the way that I originally wanted it to. And I mean, I also, just to say, like, my pain isn't gone. I'm always going to have this cross of infertility. I'm always going to desire to have feel a baby grow in my womb. That's not going to happen. But that pain and joy can coexist. That's something I've accepted, and it's hard. But like I said, God is bringing new life in so many other ways that I'm now, my eyes are opening to. So just to not say, like, my pain has to be gone for me to find healing and to be happy and joyful and fulfilled, that's just not true. The pain can still be there, but we can accept it. And we can really, that's a lot, oftentimes, how God reaches out to us. I felt my closest to Jesus when I was in, like, the depths of physical pain. I felt closest to him because he felt it too. So just a reminder that it feels like he's far, but he's closest to us when we're having that pain.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful, Mary. So eloquent and spoken from a perspective that only can be realized through that wisdom of pain, right? That wisdom of the journey. It reminds me of, I was just talking to a dear friend's her mom who just lost her husband, and she was telling me about a book Peter Kraft wrote on suffering. I can't remember the title right now; it's eluding my brain. But she said that he talked about suffering as this diamond. Like, we're always trying to just get rid of that suffering, but we need to instead see this diamond from all the different areas of how it can help us to grow and reflect light through that suffering. And this is a woman that has, seen immense suffering and helped, like, really was her husband's nurse his last year of life. And it just was so beautiful. And I thought of that too as I was finishing reading your book on the trip while I went to his funeral, just how beautiful that crucible of suffering, right? But like seeing that as a diamond instead of as a pot of tar that we need to, like, get out of our way, right? Which is so countercultural.
I know. And it's a challenge, even for me now. I mean, I have lots of different suffering that we all go through suffering, right? Like, whether, one of mine is infertility, but somebody else is something, one other thing. And now I'm, going through some other stuff. And I'm trying to take what I've learned from my suffering with infertility, and because it's the same concept, like you're saying, there is that diamond. This is how God molds us. This is how we grow. And growing is painful,
Yeah, for sure. Most definitely. I love so much about your journey and so much of how you spoke about it in your book, because I think this is something that oftentimes people feel very isolated, like they're the only ones. And whether they're in these faithful Catholic circles where they're surrounded by full pews, or whether they just feel like no one has ever felt this before. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited to hear you speak more to that pain and suffering, because I think as we can come together and carry our crosses together, that solidarity can just be such a beautiful gift to our hearts. And I think that's a way we can tangibly feel that that companionship of our Lord, right, is through the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So what I'm sure you've come across this more often than I have, but I will hear people say things to me. I actually had a client of mine who found out about NAPRO, and she said, well, I found out about it after I became Catholic, and I became Catholic because it was the only place that people were talking about infertility as a cross and as something that we had to like really, that there was a pain there, that there was a weight there, that it was not okay, right, just to have that cross, where she didn't feel like that was talked about in any other Christian circles. And so they became Catholic. But then I've also heard the opposite, right, where people leave the church because of our stance on, artificial reproductive technologies and all of these other things. So tell me a little bit more about how you've encountered that, if you've seen that with other people, or if you ever felt some of those tugs in your journey.
Yeah, I think it really depends on where you are and the people that you encounter. Like you said, thank God she was able to encounter some people who are able to identify, even speak to it. That's not something that I had growing up, and I have a huge Catholic community over here, and that is the thing that has been the biggest cross for me. Outside, like I said, I've accepted that I'm not going to have children. It's still painful, but I'm still today dealing with a Catholic community that I just don't feel very much a part of. And that's just part of my cross still. So that's part of the reason I do the work that I do, to just kind of say, like, we need to bring these things into conversation. I'm fortunate I was so strong in my faith, because I absolutely see how this could turn somebody away. Because here we are, this church that's supposed to be, we're supposed to be, governed by love and welcoming people and including everybody, like, obviously not condoning sin, but meeting people where they are, and like saying you are a part of this family. And I didn't get that. I could see how you could leave the church in that way, but I understood that these are people who have their own wounds and are just have this lack of awareness. I knew that's not what the church itself teaches, and that's what I think the difference is in understanding and loving our church for who she is and who Christ instituted her to be, and not getting confused and distracted by people, because people are going to disappoint us. They just will. And no matter what the topic is. But Christ remains faithful to his church, and we are his church. So we're the ones to speak up about it. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I will say that it's interesting what I've noticed in as far as solidarity goes and friendships. It's not necessarily the people who are infertile that have seen me, but the ones who have suffered and who recognize the gift that I am. And so it's those who've invested in me and my gifts, and those kinds of things that has been really healing for me. And what I've learned is to invest in those people who invest in me. But I'm still being honest. I'm still sharing, like, with these people and what the struggle of infertility is, but also just recognizing when that doesn't hit home, and not remaining there, but investing in the relationships that do see me, and talking about it with my priest and my pastor, and just saying, like, look, this is something that exists, and there's a priest in Lincoln, Nebraska. I spotted an article on Instagram. Actually, somebody shared the article he wrote, and he wrote on infertility, and I couldn't believe it, because you don't see priests really talking about it, or if they do, I'm just happy that they talk about it. But he spoke about it in a way that I could tell that he has walked with people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen in this one little article. So I reached out to him and I thanked him. And so we've been like keeping in touch on the side. And that's just been so fruitful to see people just giving it some space, especially religious.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, how beautiful. I love that. I've never heard a priest speak out on it. And I think it oftentimes in my own journey, we've had subfertility in between some kiddos. We had, a long stretch with no pregnancies. And it's funny how, and this was really what gave me even bigger heart for women that are carrying the cross of infertility, whether it's permanently or for a long time, was just the way that I felt when I would introduce myself, as if I had to justify why we have
Yes.
big scene, or why we've been married 17 years and have
Exactly.
or
And
why.
why is that the case? Like, that shouldn't be the case, that we're defending our, and that's what I'm feeling. It's not overtly said. It's just what is just, it's so seeped in, and we feel that, you feel that, more than anything,
Yeah, for sure. It's a very interesting predicament.
It really is.
So true. Oh, I wanted to read this one passage to you all, just to give you a little taste of Mary, and this wonderful book that she's written. This spoke so strongly to me. So she says, I can choose to let infertility break me, or I can find the unexpected love story about how it, along with other sufferings, has delivered my greatest joys. The joy of significant spiritual growth, greater strength, increased depth of intimacy with God and my spouse, our beautiful and one-of-a-kind daughter, the hope of another child, the understanding of motherhood as a choice we make daily, and a challenge to uncover my true gifts and purposes. I would not be the woman I am today without my struggles. 12 stripes deep, they've made me who I am. 12 laps on the track, but I still stand. So for those of you that don't know, I think I mentioned it in your bio, but Mary also has some rap talent that I just loved how you wove that into the book. It just made my heart so happy in the middle of this like beautiful, life-giving, heavy story that you're sharing. And also this, like, I just love it. I stopped in the middle and I pulled my 14-year-old son over and I was like,
oh my gosh.
What? She raps, and he loves to rap. He loves music. And so
I love it.
Videos, and he was like, "That's so good."
Oh my gosh.
It was so amazing. It was such a joy.
That touches my heart thing. Because I know you look at me, and that is not the first thing you think, which is part of what I break apart in the book a little bit. But and that was something for my own self that was like a struggle, because I know what I look like, and I'm like, this is just shocking. But that's also kind of part of the appeal, right? But no, thank you for appreciating that, because I actually wasn't sure I was going to leave that in the book. So, but because the point is, it's not about rapping. Mm-hmm. Rapping was just the thing for me that was a deep, like, a gift and a deep desire that was sitting on the shelf. Mm-hmm. That was the point. And what I discovered through infertility, and rapping is the example I use because it's so unusual and weird, but it was like, no, God has given us these gifts and these passions and these desires that we just kind of forget about. We get distracted, especially infertility comes in, and our goal becomes to have a child. Yeah. And everything else, even our family relationships and our friendships, kind of fall back because it's like we're just grasping for this thing that is good, right? This is a good thing. I don't want to say it's not, because it is. But like, what else is God put on our hearts and gifted us with? So that for me, one of those many things was rapping. And when I kind of wasn't so scared to uncover that, I realized how talented I really was with it. Yeah. And that's what I learned humility is. Yeah. It's not building yourself up or breaking yourself down, but being honest about who you are. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And the vulnerability to be willing to share that with others, it's so beautiful. I love that. So one of the things I love to ask people is, and you definitely go into this in great depth in your book, and I feel like we've kind of talked about this already, but I just love to, poignantly ask two questions. And one of them is, in what ways have you been fertile in a season of infertility? And then my other one is, what do you want to say to those that are really struggling with carrying their cross right now? Mm-hmm. Okay. You might have to repeat that second.
That's okay. We're good.
The first one, what was I already forgot the first one.
Okay. In what ways were you able to be fertile? Yeah.
I love that you asked that question. Oh my gosh. I love it. No. Oh my gosh, do we have enough time? Like I said, because it was infertility that helps me to realize how fertile and it's not just me. Yeah. It's every person has the ability, no matter how many children that you have, we are all called to be fertile and fruitful in all these other ways. So, I mean, the first thing I recognized after we went to adopt our daughter, of course, is writing. I love to write, and I find I can really connect with people through writing, and it's also a great way to express myself. My husband and I became marriage prep mentor couple about 5 years into marriage. And that was a shock. It's not something we planned to do, but we had some friends getting married and they asked us. So we were like, okay, we'll discern this. And we just finished with our 6th couple, I think. It has been just, this is just so interesting. Like, I'm recognizing, because we just finished with them last week, and we were talking to them about on the night on we're talking about sex and sexuality and making moral decisions and NFP and all that, and responsible parenthood. And I love that we get the opportunity to share with them, yes, having children is one way to be fruitful, but we are called to be fruitful in so many different ways. And I love that we can bring this other side of the picture that you don't really hear a lot about procreation and being open to life and all that looks like. And on our last session, we invited them to become parishioners at our parish, and we said, because they weren't going to church before, they're living together, and all comes with that. And so we were able to really challenge them and bring them another side of the church that is just like, we see you and we want to welcome you anyway. Like, come be members of our church. And to be able to participate in the fruitfulness that we're just sharing with them is just so cool. And, that's going to bear fruit, because hopefully if we've done our job right, then as they enter into their sacrament, they're going to make God's love tangible for the world. And that's going to keep giving. And so fruitfulness just keeps on giving, whether it's through our own children or all these other ways. So those are some ways. I mean, cooking for friends who need it, like if they're struggling with something, listening is a way that I'm fruitful. Being a good friend. I mean, I could just go on forever, but.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. And it's so true. It's sometimes I think we get the eyes of faith to really be able to see those ripple effects, right? And
Yes.
It can go on forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet so often we think of it in a very limited box, just like we try to box in other things with our faith, right?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that's beautiful. Okay, so what would you say to those that are in the throes of infertility and maybe despairing or on the edge of despair?
Yeah, I just want to say that I see you and God sees. I mean, I don't know you personally, but there are so many things that are so beautiful inside of you. And infertility cannot rob you of that. Infertility cannot rob you of God's plan. It cannot rob you of fruitfulness. And I know that it is painful, and that is real, and we need to feel that pain. But I don't want it to make you believe that you are not worthy and not valuable. So I just think it's just knowing your worth and your valuable. And your value, no matter like what infertility brings you. And that even if a pregnancy never comes, and maybe you're dealing with secondary infertility. So even if a pregnancy doesn't come again, that you can still be joyful and you can still experience life to the fullness. And I know that because I'm living it. So it's possible for all of us.
Oh, I love that so much. Okay, so Mary, how can they find you other than reading your amazing book? It's so good, you all. You have to read Mary's book. How can they find you?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, White Lotus Blooming. Also Fan Base, that's my nonprofit with one of my best friends, Emily Frazee. FABMBASE. We're also on Instagram. You can find our website and share it with others who may be struggling to find restorative reproductive medicine or the fertility awareness method that fits you best. That's FABMBASE.org. And like you mentioned, I am working on a journal that I'm really excited to release hopefully this year at some point. Lots of the stuff that I'm talking about going a bit deeper than in the book. And so the book is written for whether you're fertile or infertile. I really hoped to make the connections that you're making, but the journal is just for infertile women to work through some of these things. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today, Mary.
Thank you.
I want to open it up to questions from ladies that are able to watch us live. So if you ladies have questions, you can put them either in the YouTube chat or in our group message chat through the Better portal. And we'll go ahead and ask Mary. Pull up all the things. All There's one coming. She's
Okay.
typing.
Time. It's just so nice to have this. Like I said, I just wish I had things like this when I was going through it, just to hear other women doing the same thing, you know, because we don't talk about it. We don't feel safe to talk about it a lot.
Yeah, I know. It is so beautiful. I love, there's a really special group of women that I get to meet with, and it's so beautiful, their community that they've built with one another. And even, you know, one of them had an endo surgery and the other two have already had endo surgeries. So they were like, they're just so sweet.
Oh, I love that.
It's such a beautiful community. Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think if I had another question for you while we're waiting for Emily's question to come through.
Okay, yeah, no worries, no problem. I remember too, before I had my first surgery, I called the doctor's office because I didn't know anybody who had surgery. I was like, can you connect me with somebody? Because I was just so scared. I just didn't know what to expect. And so they helped me a little bit with that. But it does help. It helps to
yeah, well, and you see on a lot of I'm sure you're on there too, or at least you were at one point, but I feel like a lot of the NFP boards, the NAPRO boards, like there's a lot of like, did anyone have, you know, endo and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, I always want to say, like, you know, people will respond and be like, yes, this is my miracle baby, or yes, this is, you know what I mean? Or, oh, just waiting. Had that happen this not long ago. But I feel like that's where we need more of these conversations, because we truly need that depth of like, it's not just the baby, right? Like God, there's a baby in arms in your journey, but like, that's not always and that's why I think it's so important to talk about this from a lens of like, you're still fertile, right? Like, in what ways has the Lord called you to that, even if he didn't honor this? Okay.
I really agree.
Actually, it's not really a question, but if you could just talk more about how you came to adoption and made it work, or possibly considering it, but it's just so much to look at, and the cost. Where do we start?
Oh, absolutely. I want to say, yeah, I love talking about adoption. I mean, that's a whole nother episode. But I want to say I was not always on board with adoption. And I talk about that in the book. There's a whole chapter on adoption in the book. My husband was ready far before I was. It's not something I grew up around. He grew up around it. So it's just foreign to me. And for me, it felt like I was accepting I'd never get pregnant if we adopted. That didn't make any sense. It's just what was on my mind. So it was actually like 3 months after I was just sharing that worst day that I had with the negative pregnancy test that I said, okay, if we're not pregnant in a few months, then I'll start the process. Now that was just me. I don't like to give God like timelines. That was just the time I needed to start to kind of like shift the focus of my heart on really what God wanted rather than what I wanted. And for us, that was adoption. So this is an individual discernment. I'll tell you for everybody, I'll tell you how we discerned it, how I discerned it. I'm a very simple girl. I need things simplified. For me, I don't think every infertile couple is called to adopt, but I think a lot are. I knew I was called to mother a child in this way. I knew that. And I knew my husband was too. So that checked the box. It wasn't happening. Obviously with all the medical treatments and stuff. And IVF, artificial reproductive technologies, were not going to be an option for us either. And so not only did I know we were called to mother a child and father a child in this way, but it was at that time. And so it was okay. So like that was what was on my heart, what we discerned. So we started the process, which for us, the first year at time, it took a year. But even as we started the process, I wasn't ready. This was something that God moved my heart over the next year. It was scary. But I knew it was just my yes that he was looking for, and everything else fell into place. So that doesn't mean it was easy. It was scary. We were very fortunate that our birth mother didn't change her mind. I learned a lot I didn't expect to learn in the process, and that was about the birth mother as well. So I learned a lot about how we kind of view birth mothers and how they deserve to be treated, and that this is a trauma. Adoption is a trauma for the birth mother and the child. So to go into it with that understanding, I learned that at the last minute, and that really helped me to love her, the birth mother, better. But by the time before Bella was even born, God had completely changed my heart and opened it. There were no issues at all. Like we were going to love this child as our own. It was just natural. And it wasn't like that when I started. So just to say, we were very fortunate to have the funds to be able to do this. I know not everybody does, but again, if this is what God, for me, it was my heart wasn't in the right place. The funds were in the right place, but my heart wasn't. So, but God makes things happen. If this is what he's called you to do, he's just looking for your yes and the right timing of that. Also, when you say yes, okay, and I know I need to wrap this up because I'll just keep talking forever about it. But when you start the process, you don't just say yes to the first child that it could be placed for you. There's still a discernment process. You can say, no, this isn't the right time. So we have said no. So just to say that, like, if God's calling you to adoption, he's calling you to a specific birth family to go walk into this process with. So it's an ongoing discernment process that for us, we just knew when it came, this is the right call for us. Now that was a year. Now we're 2.5 years in. So yeah, it can be different, and it's just an ongoing discernment process, you know.
Wow, that's so interesting. So what kind of, did you have like a closed adoption or an open adoption with your daughter, Bella?
So that's something that is not legal. That's something that is decided between parents, birth and adoptive parents. Now, some agencies, like there's an agency over here that says we only do open adoptions, but as far as I know, there's no way they can enforce that. We believe it's a case-by-case basis. It really depends on the people. To just say no matter what it's open or no matter what it's closed, it's a case by case. Bella was partial, so we communicated. So we got like the Facebook. I think whatever works for the individual couples. So we had her Facebook, and we said we're gonna put pictures of Bella, and that way whenever she's feeling like she's open, like ready, she can go look at it at her convenience. You know, and you got to be respectful of the birth family and what's good for both families, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That's beautiful. Emily says that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And I can't wait to get your book.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. Really good question.
So good. If there's any other questions, ladies, go ahead and put them in the comment box. So I'm curious, Mary, on your FABM base, do you have like any kind of, sorry, I'm having weird feedback. Do you have any kind of like a quiz or anything with like helping people figure out different methods, or a resource for that?
Okay, I don't like quizzes for this topic because there's so much nuance. So we considered doing a quiz, but it just wasn't, we didn't feel like it was the best fit. I mean, honestly, it's hard because you kind of got to go through it to really know what the best fit is, but we can give you as much information as possible. So the way we did this, in addition to lots of other things we've done, there's 2 ways that you can do it on our website. We have a user database. So we created a form, like a survey that over 80 women filled out on different life experiences, backgrounds, medical situations, and different methods. And so you can go to our user database, and on the side, on the left-hand side, and it teaches you how to use it, but you can check off the criteria that fits you. And it automatically shows you the profiles of women that look like, that have that situation. So you're reading, like, it's short, it's not too long, but what was unexpected for me in that process was like a lot of solidarity. And like, wow, this woman, like, and learning about people who are having experiences that I don't, which that's something that I really want to get better at now that I'm infertile, because I understand that value. So you can click hormonal birth control, and you can read like the profiles of like 8 women who made the switch from birth control to, NFP and how that went for them. So this is a real life, like, it's not filtered. you're getting the experiences of women. Click infertility, and you'll see all the women who had that experience and the method that they used. And then we have a method overview section that goes through the details just objectively of each method, which has the medical aspects and, the user that loves this method and, the biomarkers each methods use. And we actually have links to the methods that where you purchase different materials, you can it links right there from the website. You can go purchase those materials. So we were very thoughtful as users who understand what, a lot of needs are. I'm sorry, I don't know why my video is doing that weird dance.
You're good. That's amazing. What a beautiful resource. I love that so much. It makes me laugh because I'm sure you've had this happen too, where people find out that I'm a Creighton practitioner and I always get the same thing. They'll say to me, well, we used to use method X, but then Y happened and now we use Z. And they're like, but you hear that all the time. And I'm like, I do, but never are these variables the same. It's always like, they're like, I used Creighton and now this happened and I use Marquette. But it's always like a different method swap for a different situation. It's hilarious.
And that's the beauty of it. That's okay.
True. That's what I always tell them.
Fit can change. And that's what we really want to give women the freedom to, because this is other stuff that's not really talked about in our church. It's just like use NFP and that's one method. And it's like, and it's free. And it's like, no, that's not really that's actually not even close to accurate. So
there.
Many things, problems with that statement. Oh, and it's easy too, by the way. No, it's not that easy
for everyone all the time.
It's rewarding, but it's just different. Let's not sell it as birth control because it's not.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Oh, well, thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Rita. It's been so nice talking to you.